feed this on Facebook as well. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our second virtual forum that IPM is going to be conducting each week on Friday in English, currently during the noon hour, which provides an opportunity for international executive board members, donors, friends, volunteers, and staff and partners, most importantly, to share with one another and talk about how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting their work, some of the challenges that are popping up within their respective countries, how they're dealing with those, and how we might respond as an organization and as an international multi-faith community that's concerned with promoting justice, peace, and hope around the world. Today, we're pleased to be joined, in theory, we're hoping, by our regional director, Mahesh Upadhyaya, who's been a friend of IPM going back over almost 2 decades now. Started as a consultant through a relationship with a then employee of the Cleveland Foundation, a woman named Shilpa Kedar. Actually, I think she was at Case Western Reserve at that point. And she had traveled to India right after I had begun my work with IPM. And we asked, we were going to go over to India and sort of see the partners, find out what was going on the ground, and particularly provide some support to Dr. Charles at the Kanyakumari Health Trust in South India. And Shilpa went about 6 months before me and broke her ankle in Nagercoil. Those of you who've been with me to India know probably not the best place to break your ankle. And she contacted Mahesh, who she knew through, I believe it was secondary school, up, years before then. Mahesh is older than I am. And he put her in touch with a friend. She sort of was able to get out of Nagercoil, but she came back to the U.S. with a cast and some interesting reporting on what IPM was doing currently and perceptions about what we had been doing historically in India. So we, long story short, she couldn't go back to India with me. I went over on my own. I met Mahesh. We still laugh about this in Goa on the coast, which is, if you've been to India, is kind of an interesting place. It has Portuguese history, sort of a thriving beach scene, and became pretty infamous in the West a few years later for the murder of a young British woman on the beach there. There's a big drug scene. A lot of Israeli soldiers on leave spend their extra money and time there. And frankly, one of the real centers of child trafficking for prostitution and sexual exploitation in India. So I land there, and I met at the airport by Mahesh on a motorcycle, basically, with a motorcycle driver. And I climb on the back of the motorcycle, and there's 3 of us, the driver, Mahesh, and I. And we ride off into the sunset. And the rest, as they say, is history. He became an IPM board member. And pretty quickly thereafter, we were so impressed with his work and the connections, particularly around Dr. Charles's sudden death, that we asked him to join the staff. And so he served as South Asia regional director now for over a decade. You can see his bio online. And I would say one of the greatest gifts that he's given IPM in his time with us is the connection with Hemit and Hemit's work in Golana. Hemit, many of you have met at the International General Assembly and other gatherings, is a remarkable young man whose early life was scarred by the murder of his father, who was an activist in his community. And he, along with his mother and other members of their Dalit community, have sort of taken up the mantle of his father's work. And he just continues to amaze all of us affiliated with IPM, particularly his colleagues, in his dedication and commitment, despite great risk, to the people with whom he lives and the people that he seeks to support and accompany in his really important work. I'll let him say a little bit more about his family and his history with Mahesh. I believe Hemit's family originally got to know Mahesh through Mahesh's spouse, Meena, who was an activist. If any of you have met Meena, you can imagine that. You know what a powerhouse she was, and she was connected with his family very early on, and eventually through Mahesh's relationship with her, he got connected with the Golana community. It's probably important also to note that Hemad is our first ever regional fellow. So at the 40th anniversary General Assembly, we decided to pilot a model that would allow for certain project partners that we thought were particularly extraordinary in South Asia to come onto the staff, if you will, in a fellowship role where we would provide direct financial, material, emotional, and other support for them so that they could carry out their work, but really with very limited restrictions. So rather than saying you submit a proposal, we'll tell you whether we'll fund it, and then in a couple of years you tell us what you do, we sort of say your work is so extraordinary, we want to support you in your work and whatever you think the priorities should be for your community, and we're just going to continue to do that. So that's going on 4 or 5 years now. We've been responding remarkably to the COVID-19 pandemic, and just a wonderful guy who's very dear to my family, to Hank Dahl, who's not on the call, who I imagine William it was, and many other long-term important supporters of IPM, like Stuart Cole, those of you in Cleveland, and others who have supported our work in India. So I guess without further ado, Hemad, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if I'm looking down, that means I'm communicating with Mahesh and trying to figure out if he's able to join us or not. So Hemad, thanks for being here.
Okay. So thank you, Joe. And good morning to all our IPM members and partners. I think first time I have thanked to IPM to help Jet Tribes community to give the ration kits in this COVID-19. So we have distributed 150 kits to the Jet Tribes. And I am request to Joe, please explain the Jet Tribes situation in because you know that and you remember and you visit their houses and the people.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So how many of you on the call, I probably know this, but can I just see a show of hands so I'm sure how many of you have been to India?
In
I don't think many, yeah. Hello. How many of you, really nobody on this call, I don't think, has been to India with IPM? Larry, you're muted. I mean, other than Larry, excuse me.
Larry, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Jat tribe is a, I may not get this completely right, but they're a community that was basically trapped in this part of the Gujarat province. So Gujarat is, if you will, in the northwest of India, but not really far north, more west along the border of the Bay of the Arabian Sea and connecting directly to Pakistan, with Afghanistan there obviously as well further north. And this community is a migrant community, and they were basically trapped in this area of India during partition and have been there ever since. I guess I can say this on this call. If you remember the magazine, or you still get National Geographic, they're the kind of population that National Geographic loves to highlight. They're truly an indigenous migrant community. Their clothing, their jewelry, the way they live is very sort of National Geographic-ish. It can be exploited often in those types of publications, but really hovering the margins of society in Gujarat. They live, the first time we visited there many years ago, they were gathered around, they were squatting on land, gathered around basically a borehole where their cattle, their goats, and themselves were getting water very sporadically. I shouldn't really even say a borehole because that gives you the impression it was deep, really a watering hole that was seasonal. And just living in incredible poverty with very limited access to food and often being threatened for being on land that bordered what could be perceived as wealthy or productive farmland. So Hemat's been accompanying them for years, and Hank and the late Mary Dow were the two first IPM supporters of that in their work there. Is that enough to say, Hemat?
So we distribute 150 kits, ration kit to all the 150 families, Jat family, and they have no food, no vegetables. Then we have give to vegetables. Then they have no drinking water. So still we buy the tankers, the drinking water, and then we supply to them. So uh, after IPM help, we do so many help to the Jat tribe community, and uh, I think Mahesh Bhai is joined.
Yes.
Yes. So today and
Yeah,
yesterday,
carry on.
I have shared my experience. So today in morning, I show six migrant labor. They are walking and they go to UP, Uttar Pradesh. So in my area uh, to Uttar Pradesh, 1200 kilometers far to my area, and they came in Rajkot. So 300 kilometers they have walked, and they came to uh, near my area. So I meet, I talk him, and they have no, all are hungry, no food, no water, and they have a very uh, that they meet. I personally I meet police, and police are no help to me, and they told me that uh, I'm told police, please, if possible, to I give food to them, and they told me that don't give food to workers because our officers sometimes they come and uh, they are troubling. Then myself and my friends, I call him, and they bring their vehicle and two vehicle. Then they sit my vehicle, and I will drop in Tarapur. So this is real situation for migrant labor in India and many of states.
So Mahesh has joined us, and I think that might be a good point for him to join in just to give you a little bit more background if that wasn't clear. Um, this tribe has been attacked by thugs on the land where they've squatted multiple, and it's really been, we were able to get them cell phone technology and their ability to stay in touch with Hemet, which really has, on a couple of occasions, sort of saved the community and allowed them to stay there. Just in the last couple of weeks, and this includes the Jat tribes and some of the other migrant folks that Hemet referred to, through IPM's very minimal financial support. I was this with Mark Shargell, who some of you know, a friend of IPM from California, who's involved with the Ostera Fund at the Jewish Community Federation in Cleveland. It's something like 3 cents a meal, if that. Hemet has provided 1,150 families, roughly, with almost 12,000, I guess 11, excuse me, 1,000, No, yeah, 11,500. I always have to do a double take with these Indian numbers because they get to scale so quickly. With 11,500 meals. So 11,500 meals, in additional cooked food to over 1,175 people. And you can see some of the photos of that food distribution taking place on our website. And of course, it's a simple meal, rice and dal and other things, but exactly what people need to get through at times like this. So maybe I'll turn it over to Mahesh now, and I'll let you, Mahesh, moderate the conversation with Hemant as well as we go forward. Mahesh?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Sorry for the delay and the connectivity issues. I'm not joined from my app, but from the browser. So I don't know how far you've gone, but may I start sharing the screen?
Yes.
And as I narrate, as I share the screen and as I share the stories, I shall be able to. Okay. Let me see what I'm sharing on the screen. I don't know if you're.
Mahesh, we can share the screen for you if that's difficult.
No, I have started the screen and I hope you are now able to see it.
Yes?
Okay, great. So
Perfect.
I guess, okay. So I guess this has already been shared with you that this RADIS forum is a bit about IPM's immersion partners and fellows in South Asia, in particular India and Nepal. And just to give you an idea of the two countries and on the map. And for those who have not been to India, India has a population of around 1.2 billion. And that's approximately 4 times the US population. We are on the size of the United States. We have more than 22 official languages. So, especially since Himat was mentioning migrant workers and we deal with migrant workers, you can imagine that most of them don't have a common language. They come from different parts of the country. So they have problems with the language, problems with booking tickets, problems with reading government documents, and things of that sort. To add to this data, we are also the poor in India, or those who are around the poverty line, mostly migrant laborers and others. They are approximately equal to the United States population, so they would be around 300 million, maybe approximately. This is just to give you an idea. Then you see Nepal population of around 28 million. The small orange strip that you see on the map bordering India and China, that's Nepal. Surprisingly, they have 129 languages in Nepal. And this sandwiched between India and China. The reason I'm sharing these details with you while discussing COVID is that all the organizations in South Asia, we have our long-term goals in these areas. We've been working for the past 15 to 10 years on a range of issues related to caste, related to gender, related to children's rights and developmental issues. So the COVID response is basically in the context of the larger work that we have been involved with. So when people ask us, we don't have a separate response for COVID. We have a response that is integrated into our existing crisis response mechanisms. And we have some learnings in these areas because of dealing with issues of the earthquake earlier in India. Then we had the tsunami, we have had floods. So we have had a whole range of either man-made crises like the communal violence in 2002 and later ones, or natural crisis. So we already have an existing network of people. We have member-based organizations whom we work with. So usually we are not working with strangers. We are working with people whom we know. And that's why the demands also become even more. So the demands are stronger on us, so to respond to their needs. Three things we guarantee them. We are always with them. We accompany them. We share whatever resources we have with them. And we try to network with like-minded people, both in the country and outside. And more than anything else, we are in constant conversation with them. One of the major problems of the COVID has been that social contact, human contact, both in urban and rural areas has been reduced. You're back to your homes, you're back in the ghettos in the urban areas, or you're back in your caste cluster in the villages. So there's very little interaction with the outside world. And you're forced to relate to those whom you already know and those whom you live with, and not with the other. The other major challenge for people like us, for me, Himmat to some extent, and many others, is this is the first crisis that doesn't allow us to go and minister to people directly because of the nature of the crisis. There is a lockdown. I'm in a red zone. The shops are closed. The only two things that I can get in my neighborhood is milk and drugs. And by drugs, I mean medicines, and that's all, nothing else. They were supposed to open today after a long period, but they haven't yet opened, and we are hopefully by Monday or so they will start again. This is again this is a photograph of children that Himmat and his group work with. They are working with in around 14 villages with 14 children's activity centers. Now, this was before COVID. This is what you would see before COVID. But now the classrooms are closed, and here you see a group of old infirm villagers waiting to be served their food. Some of them have been served, and I think I'm not too sure the lady in the middle is, but all this food has been cooked by Himmat and his team. And I hope you're able to see these photographs.
Yes, we are. Man.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
You can see them.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is an example of one of the villages in which Himu and his team are providing food to the elderly. As you can see, they're unable to do even any kind of physical work at all, and there is no healthcare center, no old age home that they can go to. The houses that you see behind them, each home, the small home, have maybe more than 12 to 15 people staying in each house. The next photograph again is another village, and here you see the elderly workers again being served food. I think there's nothing better than a photograph to share the reality that exists in our areas. This is again a group of children, and I think some of the immersion experience participants have visited this area. This is very close to the Chak tribe that Himmat and Joe were referring to. Hank has certainly been there in the past. I don't know if he's on the call, but he is certainly been here. Again, here the children are standing pretty close together. There's the lady there who's trying to tell them to maintain some distance. But food is food, and on a hungry stomach, it's very hard to follow the rules. This is again another village, and again you're trying to ensure that women and children get the khichdi. The khichdi is a rice and lentil mixture with a little bit of food in it and some spice and some salt. It's and a little bit of oil in it. So it tries to take care basically of your carbohydrate needs, your protein needs, and a little bit of oil, which provides the fat. This again is a place in which many of the members of the Jat tribe live. The four wooden poles that you see at the back and the temporary shed that looks like that's their home, and you can see a small bed there. This is like maybe around 2 to 3 miles away from the village because they're not allowed to stay there. So this is the place that has the problems of drinking water, of electricity, and obviously, as you can see, there's nothing around them except the bare sky. We are running temperatures of anywhere between 105 to 115 right now in many of these places. So that makes it difficult to. So that was the response that you saw in Gujarat, where Himmat is working in a rural area, and it gives you some sense of how things are happening on the ground. I think there are a lot of statistics that you can search for and look on the internet, and statistics are good, but they don't tell you the real story very, very often. And I think these small steps that we are able to take gives us a lot of confidence. Now that's Shahadat Ali. He's a Muslim, as you can obviously see by his name. He works in the city of Jaipur. Jaipur is an international tourist center. James Bond movies have been made there and various other movies. But there are around more than 27, we call them Kacha Basti or slums. They are temporary housing built on no man's land. And this is where a lot of people stay. Shahadat has been working with little children, providing them with some education, with some fun, with some learning over the last 10 to 12 years. He's an activist who organizes protests, demonstrations, makes applications to the government, makes demands on them, he organizes people. But his core commitment is to these children. He says this is the temple that he visits every morning from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. And all the children come over and he gets to teach them. This is not now during the COVID times, this is just before COVID started. But this is to introduce Shahadat Ali. So Shahadat Ali lives in these slums. You saw the room inside right now where he was with the children. And then when you step out of those rooms, this is what you see. This is the illegal settlement. Most of the people here are vendors. They provide services like home services, cleaning services. Some of them are security guards. They're waste pickers. Moving on to the next photograph, when Shahadat started distributing some food, we managed to get some food into one of the slums. And in spite of all the warnings, in spite of all the educational work we did about maintaining a distance, we had limited time. Shahadat had to wait for 3 hours before he could get into the slum because the cops stopped him. He did not have a permit, they said. And anyway, he managed to get some wheat flour. Wheat flour is what you make the Indian bread with, the roti. And what he's distributing is basically 1 or 2 kilograms of wheat flour that might last a day or two. Now, again, in many of the slums, there are maybe 700 families, and you get food for 200 families. So what do you do? How do you manage with the inability to reach out and serve food to all of them? This morning, when I was speaking to him, one of the problems in Jaipur also has been that the non-profits and all the other people with good intentions to come and go do not have a coordinated plan. So there are some slums where maybe 3 organizations or 4 organizations visit per day, and there are slums in which nobody goes to. And these are not only non-profits in the conventional sense. These include religious groups, church groups, temple groups, and many of the others. Again, there's a small tempo that is going to, and you see in this lady's hand those 2 packets. There is just wheat flour. She's going to go home, mix it with water. Maybe she has oil, maybe she doesn't have oil. And she will usually make a pancake or with her hands, with her palms, and heat it on an earthen clay pot or a pan.
Mahesh, the photographs haven't moved forward. We're still looking at Shahadat in Jaipur with the first photograph of him.
Okay. Let me see. Is it better now?
No, thank you, Jeff.
Still the same one.
Okay, let me try again.
We could try to have Ilsa or I share it if it would be better for you, Mahesh.
Yeah, as long as I can see it, and then I'll be able to comment on it.
Will you be able to see it if we share it?
I hope so.
I can try. Hold on.
Okay, what I can do is, in the meantime, I'll talk a little bit while we get the photographs worked out, because these photographs are more in terms of giving you an example of what is happening over there and the kind of environment that they are in. So I gave you examples of Shahadat. I've shared what Himmat does. Actually, the next thing that I would have really liked to share with you is the urban settlement in Ahmedabad. It's part of the old city where most of the informal sector and workers live, and women mostly. The work that HUM does in the city of Ahmedabad. HUM is Hindus United with Muslims. This is a group that was formed post 2002. And their primary concern in those days was to bring Hindu and Muslim women together and to rebuild their both their social life, economic activity, and rebuild trust in the community. And that is how HUM had started. HUM has more than 2,000 members over the last few years. They try to service as many of their members as they can in areas of education, in areas of urban infrastructure, health facilities, roads. Again, I'm not sure if Joe, you were able to share any of the HUM photographs.
We are, Mahesh, I was gonna, if you can just tell us what slide you are on. We're on number 12 now, I believe, or 13.
Okay, I'll go back to 12 then. Okay, 12 is again the city of Jaipur. And if you can move on to 13, that is what will show you what is being handed over. So slide number 13 is the one which shows a woman holding 2 bags of wheat flour, and these are the rotis or chapatis or the Indian bread that I was referring to that they make out of. So again, this is a lady who is a construction worker. Rajasthan is very interesting. We have an industrial area there where there are more than 300,000 workers. But if you calculate the number of workers who are not working in factories, but on the roadsides and streets and homes, they may be more than 700,000 to 800,000. And many of these women that you see, their husbands are construction workers. So since construction work has stopped, there's no income coming in from the men in the family. And since there's lockdown, the women can't go and vend or work in other people's homes. So they are in a difficult position both ways since money is not coming in. If we can move to slide number 14.
Yes.
Yeah. So in some places the packets are prepared and handed over, but here there is a guy who's holding a sack of wheat flour and he is filling it up in a plastic bag and serving it to them. Again, these are people who are spread out on the outskirts of the city. We call these areas urban. They are rural and urban kind of places. So they live there and they move into the city during the daytime, work in the city, and then again head back into the rural, semi-rural areas. When they don't have work in the cities, they also work in the farms. So these are the two areas that people in Rajasthan, in the city of Jaipur, which is Bill Clinton, I remember, had visited Rajasthan many years ago, and there was a big celebration there, and a lot of US money came into the city of Jaipur to beautify it, and I don't know where all the money has gone, and to improve the lives of the poor. If you can move to, I'm sorry if I'm sounding sarcastic. If you can move to this slide number 15.
Yes.
Okay. So again, this is a slide that shows the women of HUM working in a sewing class that they had organized. And this was just a few months ago. I think, Joe, it was in January where you sort of IPM made available money to buy 4 sewing machines so that many of these young women could be trained. Now, the lady in the burqa there, who is a trainer, the two of them, they are Shia Muslims, they're more Orthodox. And the lady on the left who's studying is a little bit more, I wouldn't say progressive because it's a very difficult term to explain, but she is more open to not wearing the burqa, but still devotedly religious. And there are many Muslim sects in India. There are 200, I did a study once, there are 250 subsects or subcastes of Muslims in Gujarat. So here you see 2 of them. If you can move to slide number 16.
Yes.
Okay. Slide number 16 is the kit that was, we call them kits here. That's a local language for a collection of food items that were delivered to more than 107 women out of 107 women-headed households. And out of them, 21 were widows and the remaining were women-headed households. Either their husbands had abandoned them or had gone away or migrated to some other city. The money has not come in and they have to run the homes. So each kit, so that used to be, that cost us around 1,200 rupees. So I'm trying to convert it into dollars, maybe $15 or $12, I don't know, something like that. 15 sevenza is 75, no, so maybe around $20, yeah. So these are groceries for survival. They include rice. All of you are familiar with rice, dal, again, which is a lentil, wheat flour, and this is for an average family size of 3 children, 2 adults, and 1 or 2 aged grandparents. So this food would maybe prepare around, this kit would prepare around 45 meals. So 5 or 6 people would survive on this, and if they would stretch themselves to a survival diet, they could extend it. They could make 45 meals become 60 meals, the amount of food that is cooked. Because there are many, 90% of the people who were assisted, because Ramadan is going on, they're having 1 meal a day, and this has helped them in doing that, performing their religious duties too. The next photograph again shows you one of the slum settlements where the food is being delivered. The lady in the red dress on the extreme right in colorful red is Parveen. She heads the team. The other 2 women members are members of HUM. You can see a small dog there, sort of cut off there. And here's another member of HUM who has received these rations or food items, and she's signing a document saying that she has received the said amount. The next slide is slide number 19. I just wanted to point this out because when I was sharing these photographs with some of my friends, they said, my gosh, these girls are wearing colorful dresses. They don't look like they're starving or they're in need of food. And then I had to tell them that, these are the dresses that these women, you remember the young women who were studying in the sewing classes, they were learning how to cut the dresses and to stitch. So these are the women who normally stitch these dresses on a daily basis. They're also very good at tie and dye. So many of the clothes, they follow the tie and dye method in preparing the garment material. They also do block prints. It's made out of wooden blocks. So the markets are closed now and the orders are lacking for the last 40 odd days. So again, this is, they're actually daily wages, but how the businessmen beat the law is that they provide the raw material to the women, including the cloth, the sewing machine, the thread, and everything else. And they show it as a sale to the women. And these women, then after they have finished stitching those dresses, they give it back to the businessmen. So they say they have sold a finished product to the businessmen. So there are no employment-employee relationship between the 2 of them. And that is how they deny them wages, they deny them fair wages, and they give them a minimum. So something that these women prepare, which, this is just for example, that's not the real cost. If a dress were to cost $5 for these women to make, it would sell in elite shops maybe for $100 or $80 or $100, or even $150 to $200 if it went abroad. So that's the margin. They are the lowest in the subcontracting chain. And because they are uneducated, but the skills are high, they manage to survive by this. And usually they are paid on a weekly basis. So Thursdays maybe or Fridays, the contractor would come, give them all the raw materials and all the supplies. They would take whatever finished products are there, take the signatures, and then come back again the next week and make a payment. So they used to survive on that. I am now shifting to Nepal. Again, Nepal is a neighboring country. We have had many immersion programs there. We have had partners there whom we have been working with for a long time, Fulmati and Soni. Fulmati stays in a small village called Bandipur, which is up in the hills. And she has organized a lot of women there, helped them to form self-help groups, savings. She has taught them how to deal with the tourism market, how to refurbish their homes, make it more attractive, how to deal with an international clientele on a very small basis, and how to sort of work on their interests and make their living there, homestays there, more exciting. So here you see a little small kids. This is before COVID started. Even though the number of deaths are almost zero in Nepal, One is not sure whether the testing methods and whether the other deaths that are taking place are certified as COVID deaths. But from what I hear from Sony and what I hear from Fulmati, they also had a lot of problems over there. A large percentage of Nepal is dependent on the tourism industry. So tourism is something that they thrive on. And since tourism has come to a halt, they're going through a really, really a very bad phase. Many of the other young men or middle-aged men in Nepal, they usually travel to migrate to India and neighboring countries, and some of them even go to the Gulf to work there and earn a living through a range of services, whether it's as chefs, as cooks in restaurants, as security personnel, as military personnel, and they used to send all their money back home to Nepal. But unfortunately, because of this lockdown, neither are they able to go back to their homes, and nor are new people able to. Those who went back home for a short while are not able to get out of Nepal because they too have a lockdown which has been extended. So this was before COVID, and you see the empty classrooms now. The children are the heart of most of our partners in Nepal. Whatever they do is for a better life, for a better future for the children. The classroom is not just a classroom. It's also a place where children get some love, some affection. They get some food to eat. And most of their parents or fathers are far away. There are, I remember when I went down there with John Carroll students, we stopped somewhere on the way because we saw these three young girls walking to the village school. And they were, of course, much older than the tiny tots we saw them. And then we asked them, which grade are they in? And they said, we are in 7th grade. So we said, oh, going to school? They said, yes. So in the village, they said, yes, in this village. And then we looked at the rear of the car window and we saw they were still walking out of the village. So we stopped and we asked them, we thought you said you're going to the school. They said, yeah, our school is still an hour and a half away. We still have an hour and a half to walk. So we should reach our school within the next hour. We gave them a lift, we dropped them at the school. But there are so many children in Nepal who trek for an hour to 2 hours to 2.5 hours just to get to school and to come back. So I just wanted to share these photographs. The reason I'm sharing all this is also because, again, COVID is making already existing disparities, poverty, problems and issues even much, what do you call, more complex and more difficult to deal with. I'm flipping now into something which is totally different than what we have been seeing so far. Fulmati has always been working for her community and her members. And here are a group of foreigner tourists who have been stranded in Nepal, in and around Bandipur. So knowing that IPM regularly sends or has Fulmati collaborates with IPM, Sony collaborates with IPM, and they regularly bring foreigners to the area. They thought Fulmati would be the best person to sort of be with them, to host their stay in a small farm, open ground, in a tents next to them, take care of their food needs, and basically help them survive these 15-20 days. So all the tourists who usually help Nepal with their resources, with their funding, with their thing, are receiving a return favor, as Fulmati puts it. And Fulmati doesn't want to charge them or do anything with them. They're insisting that she takes some money because she says, you're in trouble and this is my home and this is hospitality. And you're a guest and the guest is next to God, as many of them believe in this part of the world. And how can we take money from you during these difficult times? Once you get back home and once you have reached home, maybe you could send some money to cover the cost here right now. But food is something that we will not charge you. So this is a side of that. And now I'm coming back again to the theme of COVID. And after I have given you an overview, is it okay? I'll just continue for 5 more minutes and then we can have some conversations.
Sure.
Okay. So we have heard about lockdowns. We have heard about social distancing. We have heard about, we see all these things on television about how to keep fit and do yoga and go on a special diet and learn a hobby and all this thing that the mainstream media, even in India, is showing constantly on the television screen. Learn a new language, learn a new skill, zoom into phone calls. So here you see, I'm not going to take a name, you see one of the members of HUM. This is a home. You can see the bed in the corner. That is for the older lady, and if there is a grandmother or a matriarch in the house, then she will sleep there. In the left-hand corner of the room, you see a small sewing machine. So that's the machine on which she would normally do garment work or stitching or dresses or saris or blouses and things like that. And so this is the room that a family is expected to stay in 24 hours and just get out only for milk and other supplies. She lives in a red zone area, and they are only allowed to come out between 1 and 3. And they are supposed to spend the whole day in this room. And this is just one house in a cluster of around 300 homes. The lanes are very narrow. So if you get out the house, Joe has been there. Many of the Yale divinity students who were there last year who had visited Dani, they were there. You actually brush each other's bodies when you cross each other on the small path which moves into this settlement. This settlement, way back in 1969, was actually a graveyard. And when we had the riots in India, then in Gujarat, then these were their parents and grandparents of the people who settled there. And so it has never had any improvement in their infrastructure since the 1970s and the 80s. These places don't have proper water supply. Maybe it comes for an hour or two during the day. So where do they go for water? Where do they go for medicine? Where do they go for all that? So while speaking to her, she said, prison sounds better. You get food, there's open space to exercise and nothing else, and you get medical attention. So I think, yeah, that's the last slide that I had to share. That is the last slide. And just a few comments on, okay, am I back on the screen? Yeah, just a few comments on the situation here. People are busy either criticizing the central government or the state government. As things stand, the central government has announced a large number of schemes, has tried to make a lot of provisions at the policy level, they've done a lot. At the implementation level, a lot depends on all of us, the state administration, state politicians, the political parties, and the people, general populace too. So there has been lot of good moves on the part of a lot of good bureaucrats, but that has not been systemic. The system, as a system, I think there are a lot of gaps that one needs to fill up, needs to work on. Since we don't have enough resources to take care of the needs of everybody, Himmat and I and many others, we have these helpline numbers that migrants can call on us all the time. People who are in distress can call on us all the time. So we are on the phone maybe 6 to 7 hours every day. Just this morning and yesterday evening, I've been dealing with around 177 workers who are from Bengal, and like Himmat mentioned, they also want to leave Ahmedabad and walk to West Bengal, which is around 1,500 miles from my town. They're not even sure they're going to survive the journey, but they want to go back home. So that's the kind of situation we are seeing. I don't think this is the time really to go into critiquing all that is happening, but rather this is the time to ensuring that things work smoothly as far as possible. A time will come, certainly, when we need to reflect on how the systems work, whether they were efficient or not. Right now, we got to do our best to keep things moving, and that's what we are trying to do. The other thing that I wanted to briefly mention is that the bigger crisis, I think, in India is more about unemployment and hunger. People are more concerned about when are they going to get their jobs back. I couldn't get the statistics of people who have died due to other causes during the same period. And I'm sure India there are more people than 2,000 and odd people who have 2,000, how much is 2,649 people dead. I think that was the statistic today. There are more people than that who have died in India of other causes. Then the other thing that I would like to mention is that our efforts with regards to migrant workers. I think the issue of migrant workers has come to the forefront like never before. When I say migrant, they're in-country migrants. We have something known as the Interstate Migrant Workers Act. We have many programs, many schemes that favor them. But women and children are the most troubled in these circumstances. A small study today, medical study, showed that at least 60% of those who are affected by COVID are children, unlike what we hear about Western countries. So that's the other thing that we were surprised at seeing. So more than 60% of the children are having COVID, at least in Ahmedabad city. Migrants are going back, it's reverse migration taking place, but they're again going back to their rural homelands where there's no jobs there, there's not enough work there. The same reason as to why they left the villages to come to the cities continue to exist there. So the farm sector will not be able to sustain them. And sooner or later, they'll have to come back into the cities and hope that work starts here and the industry starts and the factories start. I think I'll end there. If there are any questions that you would like me to address or answer, I'll be glad to do so.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. That was excellent and really a very, as someone just said on Facebook, compelling and eye-opening presentation. And I know from talking to you and Hemant and others regularly throughout the, over the past couple of months, how difficult the situation has become, not only in your work, but for you personally, and particularly with your elderly mom and her challenges. So thank you again for taking the time on what I know was a really important day for your family, with Mega celebrating her passing of the New York bar as well. So congratulations to her, and to you and Meena, because she is who she is because of the parents you have been for. I think we have, I mean, it's a little after 1 now for Ilsa and the rest of us. We've sort of blocked even a 1:30. We don't have to go that long, and you can certainly sign off if you'd like. But if anyone has any questions, they can share those directly by unmuting themselves, or you could also post the comment directly into the Facebook feed, and I'll try to communicate it as best I can to Mahesh. So any questions or comments at this point?
Hi, this is Jan Roller, and it's so nice to see Hemant again and to hear from Mahesh. My question is, I mean, there's so many, this was really eye-opening. If you had to say the top priority, the number one that would have the greatest impact, Mahesh or Hemant, what would you say? I mean, obviously it's financial dollars, I suppose, that would be applied to it, but what would be the top priority that would have the greatest effect to help people?
Mahesh, you're muted.
Hemant, would you like to comment? Okay. Is Hemant still there?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Hemant, would you like to say something?
See, in this situation, migrant labor, they have no food, and they have we give to transportation service, because they book tickets in our railway. Sometimes they can't get any tickets, and so they stay in home and they have no food. I think
so. Food is the greatest need from Hemant's perspective. Mahesh, what do you think?
From an organizing perspective, and I'm also dealing with a lot of young leaders who are trying to ensure that people get what they need. And I think leadership needs to be supported with, along with food and other things. It might sound a little awkward for me to say that, but I'm sure Himmat staff, many of them, many people who are helping Himmat need cell phones. They need maybe a laptop or two, or they need cell phones to take photographs, to communicate to people and get to us on time. We're using phone calls, and Himmat and I can't even communicate on WhatsApp sometimes. But if they are in a fixed place where they have access to it on a daily basis, and we could share, we could compare notes, we could talk to each other. So I think along with a lot of relief supplies, because like I mentioned to you earlier, COVID is not a new thing. It's not going to go away, and health crises have come and gone. And I'm sure we will see some progress with regard to COVID too. But I think all our interventions in the context of the long term, we will see that we try to ensure that our members are more educated, have a better understanding of the system. So we are conducting short training programs. Himmat goes to the village and talks to them about the government, its structures, what are its policies, how to fill up forms, how to make applications. So this skill and knowledge development is as important as distributing food, is all that I'm saying. It is not to undermine the requirement of the food, which of course is essential. But I think we need to do a little bit along those lines too. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think in addition to what Himmat has said, this is on top of my mind.
No,
And I would just add that, just to clarify, most of you on the call, I'm a little less sure on Facebook, know that IPM is not a relief organization in its orientation or its history. But it's certainly at a time like this, we've always had emergency funds and tried to respond in the most generous and appropriate way we can in difficult situations. And this is certainly, as far as globally, probably the greatest challenge we've faced since our founding 46 years ago, as far as the impact this is having on the poorest of the poor and the communities where we work. So, if a partner says we need food, we get them food. If they say they need the ability to sew masks, we try to help them sew masks. If they need, as we did in Nicaragua recently, a online mental health, emotional support program through the good work of Della and Anita and Vicky. So we're just, Sister Gladys in Kenya and I were talking yesterday about just cash so that she can pay some of the farm workers to help feed the kids in her community. So, you do what you have to do in situations like this. Himmat, were you going to say something?
yes, Mahesh Bhai explained, and I'm add something like that. In village area, people, they are not serious about uh, COVID-19. See, in our government, in TV and radio and mobile, they have uh, continues to talk about how to uh, make a social distance, use mask, then wash your hand. But in village area, basically the people, they have no uh, water, like drinking water, and so how to wash their hands? They not use sanitizer, and so I think this is more important to teach people how to uh, you live with COVID-19, and then we teach them to make a social distance, then wash your hand, and so I think this is more important to village and slum area. I think in this situation.
Can I just add on in that context that if you were in Himmat's home community, we spoke about this yesterday, the international staff leadership team, that washing your hands isn't as simple as going to a tap. In many of these communities, you're going to a well that the wells are segregated by caste. So you're only allowed to go to a certain well based on what caste you're a member of. And literally, you can't go to the other well, and you could be beaten or worse if you do so. And so if you walk with Mahesh and Hemant to the well in the morning in Golana, you will see, you know, the poor, I hate to use the phrase the poorest of the poor, but the poorest people you can imagine, barefoot, often carrying human excrement on their heads that they're, you know, trying to, they're removing from wealthier homes, and they're going to one well or one area. And then you'll see other people, you know, more nicely dressed going to another well, and then other people going to another well. And so it puts, you know, the ability to wash your hands or wash any of your body, for that matter, in a completely different perspective when it's just not, you know, going to the tap. I hope that was okay to say, Mahesh.
Yeah, that's one of the, I think, the treasuries of India. And like I mentioned, the long-term things, caste is a very strong reality in India. It's not only the West.
Anyone
Okay,
else? Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I just want to look on Facebook one more time. Just a couple comments from Jim Camphafner, but really more supporting supporting your work and thanking you both for your presentation. From Jim Camphafner in California. Well, if that's, it is about 1:15. I want to thank everyone again for participating in this really remarkable and eye-opening forum. I was saying to someone last night that as difficult as the situation is, while maybe some of us aren't learning how to bake soda bread or new forms of yoga, IPM is certainly taking advantage of these new technologies and our ability to communicate and look one another in the eye, at least virtually, as we hear about the important work our partners and friends are doing around the world. So I want to thank Mahesh for that excellent presentation, for Hemant for joining in at the last minute, chipping in and adding his perspective. We'll schedule a forum with Hemant alone a little later on, maybe at a time where he's able to get out and about and show us more about his work. Next Friday at this time, 12 o'clock Eastern, we'll be joined by Victoria Jimenez, who is one of our two new staff people in the Latin American Regional Office and is also the coordinator of IPM's Immersion Experience Program, the first coordinator we've had based outside the United States, and we're thrilled with her work so far. She is currently, believe it or not, stuck in the Dominican Republic with her colleague Anita Ramos. They traveled there in February to meet a delegation from Stonehill College in Massachusetts, and then their flight back to Ecuador was canceled. And so they've been in quarantine in the capital for the last 2 months, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to get them on a private flight back to El Salvador next week. So if for some reason her status changes and she's unable to join us, we'll adjust. And we'll send out an email again the day before and post on Facebook so you can know more about who will be joining us at that time. Thank you all for your support and your presence during this call. Many of you have been real partners of IPM's work in India over the years, particularly supporting Hemant and Mahesh in their particular work directly. And we're deeply, deeply appreciative of that. And we'll look forward to seeing many of you next Friday. These are open forums, so please feel free to share them with your friends, and you can forward on the live Facebook feed to anyone you'd like who you think might be interested in learning more about IPM and particularly the important work we heard about today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ilsa, for managing all this. And see you next Friday, if not before. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.